Hi, I'm Lisa Eddy, your host of the Sacred Beauty Lifestyle Podcast. I'm so glad that you've made your way here and that I'm now sharing these podcasts here on YouTube. In my 25 years in the beauty industry, I have worked with thousands of women. I have witnessed so many beautiful, powerful, smart, and kind women who are hiding instead of shining. My mission is to empower you to own your true power and beauty inside and out, to be truly confident and shine through your skin. Lord knows the world needs your light. I'm committed to helping you understand the choices that you are making that are working for or against you. I'll also be sharing beauty tips and tools your mother never taught you, and together we will bust urban beauty myths. Make sure to subscribe today to receive episodes right when they are released. For those who prefer listening to the audio podcast, head over to sacredbeautylifestyle.com. That's sacredbeautylifestyle.com, and you can find the platform of your choice. Enjoy. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Sacred Beauty Lifestyle Podcast. I have such a gift for you listeners today in the name of Chao. John is a radical encourager and a change maker. He is the host of the Perspective Maintenance Podcast. He transitioned from 15 years in the fashion industry, where he helped people discover their style and confidence, to the coaching and podcast industry, where he now helps people discover their better future and their truest self. John is a personal development and assessment junkie and has done almost every assessment under the sun because he finds understanding the uniqueness of each person extremely valuable. His helping nature, combined with his love for ideation, means that he often comes up with new ideas and is really good at helping people find clarity, and is also a big believer in supporting others. We really are all in this together. A rising tide lifts all boats. Chao, I am so happy to be here with you. Thank you for being a part of the Sacred Beauty Lifestyle podcast today.
Thank you for having me, Lisa. Usually I hold space for others and help them be seen, but look at this remarkable intro. I feel very seen. Thank you.
You're welcome. And with all due respect, we haven't even begun to delve into the gifts that you bring. So it's an honor and a pleasure to get to showcase you and your magic. And I love the story of how we met. It's funny because I just interviewed rather, Sandra Hasley. And I know we met her at the Dr. Joe Dispenza retreat recently in New York. This is also where John and I met. And, it's one of those where we met and the similarities between the two of us are kind of hilarious. I remember meeting you at breakfast and feeling your energy, and I could just tell you're a really good person and really kind and really smart. And then the more we spoke, it was like, oh, you're a podcaster as well. And you were in the fashion industry, and the beauty and fashion really go hand in hand. I love fashion, as you well know, and our listeners who watch on YouTube or Instagram know that about me too. But one of the most important things that stood out about me, that stood out for me about you, was that you shared that you coach women to let them know and teach them that they have actually more value as they age, which is not something that is common. So I believe, if I have this correct, that you coach women 45 and up to really know their value and the wisdom that they bring to the table, because we're often taught the opposite, and especially here in the US.
Absolutely, which is very unfortunate because all people have inherent value, and women are in positions where they hold so much value and give so much value at a certain point in their time, where they basically, most of them who have children, give up decades of their life towards their children. Then all of a sudden, if the children are out of the nest, they may feel a little bit lost. They may not quite know where their value is held. They may not have done other things that allows for them to feel value, and then they lose sight of their value, which is really unfortunate. So all I really do is I hold up a mirror to them, one that's really clear, because I think a lot of times the mirror that we look at ourselves in are oftentimes cloudy, and we don't see ourselves very clearly. So being able to hold a mirror up to these wonderful women and show them who they really are, it's not only been empowering for them, but it's been empowering for me to see how women are really finding themselves again.
I love that you said it's also been empowering for you. Isn't that the way it is? When you serve, you're blessed. Like, right? We give the gift. Giving is the gift in itself. So I love that. And yes, I think a lot of times we're looking through dirty mirrors. So thank you for cleaning the mirrors around the globe.
I'm an expert mirror cleaner. Yes, exactly.
Clearly, I forgot to put that in the bio.
There's a certain element. I think the word coach is very overused. And one of my favorite things is coaching is really synonymous to leadership of some sort. And if you think about it, in a community, like I grew up in a community where I had leadership, not just from my father and mother, but from aunts and uncles and other people who were in my community. I was not just raised by one person. And when we, as a now in North America, when we live in such a segregated community, we're very separate, we don't necessarily feel like we have strong communities, then having leadership from different people to help guide us into the direction that we really ultimately want to go is really helpful. And sure, there are lots of coaches out there, and there should be, because we can benefit from all the coaches and all the different expertise that they have. So I love how much you, Lisa, go and get guidance from people and you give guidance. It's a very reciprocal thing. And the more that we can do that and be in each other's space and hold space for people, then the better our communities and the stronger our communities become.
100%. And you brought in an important point there is a lot of us are missing the extended family. Like you were lucky to have been able to grow up surrounded by aunts and even the community of the church. I know personally that your father was a pastor, and having that strong supportive community all around you to help lift you up and to have other people holding you accountable or to show you mirrors, right? I think is so important, and we're really missing that. So, and I think it's a time that we're kind of pivoting and we're coming back to it in different ways, like the podcasts. People are being more vulnerable and intimate and more open about deep, important conversations that we need to have on a global scale as a way of connecting and unifying us, right?
And I think it's really great. And for everyone who's listening right now, if you don't feel like you grew up with a strong community, the people who may have are not necessarily at an advantage, in the sense that as we get older and we become our own person, we really do reparent ourselves in a lot of ways. So I may have had a supportive community growing up. However, I decided to leave that community altogether because I realized that that is not in alignment to who I am as a person, and I've had to reparent myself. I've had to rediscover what my own values are. And so, as grateful as I am for that upbringing, I want to say that if you didn't have that, because you also will be going through the same experience of reparenting yourself, either from traumas or hardships, it actually makes you stronger in a lot of different ways. It's a hidden advantage. And Lisa and I were talking about this right before the recording. Sometimes things that we feel like we're at a disadvantage of in life, it actually makes us really developed in other ways because we feel like we want to compensate for that. But at the end, we benefit from having more expertise or more clarity or more wisdom or more life experience that we can speak on.
It's so true. And thank you for sharing that important piece that you actually stepped out on your own and sort of found yourself and what is really important to you, which is brave. A lot of times people talk about wanting to do things or, and don't actually do them. You hear a lot of times example for somebody in midlife to reinvent themselves even is like you were saying, the empty nesters, that the women who have raised their families and then they don't know what to do with themselves, or the big C virus that many of us experience. And then it was a time to reinvent ourselves, like how you did, leaving the fashion industry and, moving into where you are now. It takes a lot of courage, and there are great gifts that come with, whether it comes through adversity, which the whole freaking world has been going through, or whether they just come from you being brave and courageous and following that tugging on your heart, right? And sometimes it's a
Mm.
combination of the two.
It's true, and that's why what we listen to makes such a big difference. And I'm really glad you have this podcast for your listeners to listen to and get a really good grounding. I was talking to a client this morning who had a lot of abuse growing up, and that made her feel very small. She married a husband who also made her feel very small. They divorced. She remarried another person who made her feel very small, and because of time spent together and the community that has been built around her intentionally, she basically was like, John, you're going to be so proud of me. I stood up for what I wanted to do yesterday evening. And I really am seeing myself so clearly now in being able to live a life in reciprocation with another person, not just always doing what they want to do. And there is that importance of discovering ourselves and being brave and courageous, like you're saying, Lisa, which is so cool. And that's why, if I may, I want to talk a little bit and compliment you on the name of your podcast. Sacred beauty is something that isn't just necessarily an outward thing. I really believe that in the same way that our energies attracted ourselves to each other at the conference and also to Sandra and other places, when we are somebody who holds ourselves in a certain way, yes, beauty can attract, but beauty also has impact. And a lot of beauty I feel like is wasted because what is the beauty? What is the impact that that beauty is putting out there? If it's just outward physical shallow beauty, then the impact is relatively minimal. But if it's sacred beauty, if it's beauty that helps people really see themselves on the inside, want to develop that beauty, where when other people leave their presence, there is a feeling of beauty, them leaving that person with beauty, then there's impact. And then we start to propel certain values that are so healthy instead of the other values that are not necessarily that helpful.
I love that you just brought this in, and it reminds me of that quote by Maya Angelou. And I'm not going to say it verbatim, but how people remember how you make them feel,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not by exactly what you did. And it's the same thing, uh, talking about sacred beauty and the fleeting or the shallowness of just having a moment of joy and pleasure from looking at something beautiful. Like, yes, we love fashion and that brings us joy, and that could be seen as more superficial, though there is the connection I speak about of when you feel good, you look good, you look good, you feel good. And so sometimes we do want to create beauty, from the outside, and that can help us elevate our emotions, though I really speak about it being an inside job. That beauty
Mm-hmm.
really is like what we radiate. It's our essence. And that made me come to that beauty as a frequency, and that we all have our own personal beauty frequency. Yes, I wrote that. And that it's almost like your own thumbprint or fingerprint, right? And this came to me like the way that, love is also a frequency, right? We know this. They're not that far off, really, beauty and love,
Mm.
the vibrations of, and we are love. So I just really started kind of delving into and playing with this and what is beauty, and the sacred piece is, we all have these precious body temples. Like I was starting to talk about, like adorning our temples. We can do this when we're putting on makeup or clothing in a very honoring way, the same way we can when we're putting on body lotion, and really do it with love and acceptance of this temple body we have been gifted for this short time that we're on planet Earth. Or we can do beauty from a place of rejection and pushing against and not liking the way that you look, or whether it's your body, or you think your thighs are too big, or your butt's too big, or fortunately big butts and thighs are, they're accepted now. But you know how I'm joking, not joking, where we can be really harsh on judging ourselves. You wish you had bigger lips, or your nose is too whatever. And then when we go about it trying to compensate and like covering, making up, I can't even stand the word makeup when it comes to, speaking about beauty, because it's like, what are we making up for? You really are all perfectly imperfect. And the more I worked with people in the beauty business because I've been an esthetician for 25 years. So estheticians, we do facials, waxing. Waxing wasn't my jam. I like the intimacy of facial and the touch and the beautification. And I would also be doing makeup sometimes after a facial, putting makeup on people. So I'm getting really close and intimate. And I would notice the closer I was, the more beauty I would see in someone. It's like, oh my God, she has the most beautiful eyes. Or wow, her cheekbones, or things that you might not even notice immediately, and then you get closer and you really see this. So I think that there's so much to it. I know I'm jumping around and explaining it, but I think that we all have these unique physical representations of how our body is presented to the world that are all unique and beautiful, and we're trying to conform often from what we're taught to these standards of beauty, which are typically totally unrealistic and out of reach for most of us from what beauty norms are. And so that has taught a lot of us to push it back and repress it. And I'm here saying that when you are elevating from the inside, when you are really living in your heart, when you are letting source run through you, whether you call it universal energy, whether you call it source, whether you call it God, it's all the same thing. So, whatever floats your boat there, no discrimination. When you're letting this universal energy and light frequency fill you up and nurture you, and tapping into your infinite wisdom and listening to your heart and living on purpose and following your joy, life is supposed to be good and fun. You're following the breadcrumbs of joy. That lights you up. That is how you radiate your true personal beauty frequency to the world. And that is what brings the sacredness of it, is when your heart and your inside, your intentions, your love are being radiated through your skin and energy field all around you.
So correct is the secret kind of fun word that Lisa and I use. Correct is a word that I say a lot, and it's very correct. And I love that you mentioned two words, and I want to emphasize that a little bit. The first word they used was temple, and I think and the second word was fingerprint, and both are such great words. When you said temple, it made me think of something like the Sistine Chapel. It's beautiful to look at on the outside, but people really go to look at it for its inside, and they look at the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel and they can't help but to stand in awe of the beauty that they're looking at, and it fundamentally changes a person. And in the same way that when somebody spends time with a person who possesses sacred beauty, when that person leaves the other person's presence, there is a feeling of being changed forever. And that amount of impact, that level of beauty, I really believe is so much more valuable than just the outward adornment of beauty, which we do think we were given that. And I think we shouldn't put that down. We should enjoy outward beauty. It's how we were created, it's what we were given. And what if we can spend time on the outside as much as we spend time on the inside? And this goes back to the word fingerprint that you brought up. Literally, a fingerprint is an impression. So when somebody has an impression of that fingertip, so what are the impressions that people have of us when they spend time with us? Is the impression that we encourage them, inspire them to adorn themselves outwardly? Or is the impression that we inspire them to work on themselves inwardly and to work on this inner beauty because they left time with us feeling so inspired and rejuvenated, feeling so beautiful, and was in the presence of beauty as well? And I love old couples. They're the best. And my favorite thing is old couples where the old elderly man, looks at this elderly woman and he would say, "You're more beautiful to me now than you were when you were young." And did that make sense? On one hand, outwardly, she's nowhere as quote, quote, beautiful as she was when she was younger. But what this elderly man is seeing is not the outward only, but he's seeing the mother of his children. He's seeing the grandmother of his grandchildren. He's seeing the person who was by his side when he was sick or went through a hard time. He looks at that beautiful person and beholds so much beauty because of all the things related to that whole person. And so much of that is inward sacred beauty. And so I love that you have this podcast, that you bring on guests to really help your audience grow in their sacred beauty, not just necessarily feel inspired by outward beauty, because we have enough of that influence in the media. And it's nice to have some counter influence of us understanding and valuing how we can be more beautiful on the inside.
I love all of this so freaking much. I too love old couples. Not surprised. What our listeners, what you don't know about us yet, John and I call ourselves opposite twins or like twinsies because we've been called the dynamic duo. It was immediate and it just keeps getting better and better. The similarities between us are absolutely hilarious. I too love looking at older couples, and I always joke that I'm going to be that older woman in my sneakers, skipping across the street with my hubby holding hands, and people are going to be like, "She is not 90." Uh-huh. Because that's just it too. Age is also, and I don't like to say age is just a number, but it's kind of a perception. Like when we're really owning all of who we really are, we're really joyful, we're living our best lives, we radiate that. And that is part of the defying of aging is the sacred beauty lifestyle. And there are many components. Sure, it's like what we eat and how much water we drink and the thoughts we think and how our sleep, beauty sleep is real, like all of these things that make up the sacred beauty lifestyle. And there really is so much about the love and joy that we're radiating that preserves, that keeps us young, that really keeps us young and
Hmm.
happy. Yeah.
Very much so. And I'm almost tempted to say something that I think might be a little controversial, and
Great.
that is sometimes we put the cart before the horse. When we focus on doing all the things for us to look younger and buy all the things, then sure, that's really great. What we don't see often, and we're not told this because we're not necessarily in the presence of teachers or guides or leaders or coaches, is that really what makes us younger is when we're serving other people. When we live a life so full because people love us, they cherish us, our life has value and meaning. There's rejuvenation physically that we have. The endorphins in our bodies, the chemicals that our bodies make to keep ourselves young and happy and youthful are beyond what we can put on our body in a certain sense. And I see a lot of times, even currently, my parents are in their 70s and they are just starting to get white hair, and it's so remarkable because not white hair doesn't make a difference, but there's a sign of they're such an integral part of their community. They feel so joyful and meaningful. Their life is full of purpose that their bodies have kept themselves young. They didn't have to really do much. And when we can enter into that and focus on that, as well as eating healthy, getting enough sleep, drinking a lot of water, then we really can be in a very great place where, I mean, people talk about the blue zones in the world where people are living longer and they are happier, but that's because they're valuing these things, not necessarily just the outward things. And I love that this is a platform where people can hear this counter cultural opinion and really be encouraged and inspired to live this life full of impacting others, full of purpose, full of meaning.
Mm, the blue zones, one of the things about the blue zone is that they are supported in community. That is one of the key things throughout all the various blue zones. I think there are 5 in the world. And and then they can walk places, so they're seeing people, they're seeing their community en route when they're out there walking, and they have that support and connection, and that definitely plays a role in how we feel. And I really
Mm.
think that love, it's interesting because you and I are both temporarily not in relationships, right? Not in a partnership with a significant other at this time. And I don't feel like I'm missing anything. I mean, sure, it'd be nice to, there are certain things that, you don't get from your friends, that will be nice to experience again, better than ever, next time. And there's so much joy and fulfillment in my heart from the deep connections that I have with people like you and so many others in my life. Like, I feel so supported that I don't feel like I'm missing anything. Like, this joy that comes from relationships is it's everything.
And ironically, it's what's going to help make our future romantic relationships healthier. because then we're not just all, and we've all gone through this. Let's say in high school your best friend gets a romantic relationship and then they stop hanging out with you, and they focus so much time on that and they don't have the time to build their community and their friendship, and then the relationship goes sour because somehow they've gotten lost by just being by themselves. But when we're in a relationship and we have healthy community around us, then we set ourselves up for the best case scenario where we still have the support of our community, and we're bringing then our best foot forward to the relationship, because we're not requiring for the relationship to be the thing that satisfies us, because we come to the relationship already satisfied by our community. And so for those who are listening right now, perhaps a homework from this episode is, let's do a community audit. Write down the names of the people who are in your life and think to yourself, are these people who pour into me? Are they people who support my development? Are they people who, when I leave their presence, I feel like there's sacred beauty? Or are they people where I can laugh and just be my fullest self when I'm around them? Or are they people who, when I feel really stressed out after I leave them, or after I leave them, I feel like I'm not enough and I need to do more? And when we can really audit our community and then start to build our community around people who live the sacred beauty lifestyle, then we're able to fosters so much healthiness within ourselves because we're around the right people. And then it becomes almost a snowball effect where more things come into our life, and more health comes into our life, and more opportunities come into our life, and more joy comes into our life, because we have intentionally surrounded ourselves with the people who also value having this sacred beauty lifestyle.
Mm. And it's a frequency. Like I was saying, how beauty is a frequency. And so you're talking about elevating higher because, right? Everything can be measured in frequency, as many of us know, right? And that's where I was saying love actually has a megahertz, a frequency. Dr. Emoto did, some great work on that. Do you know who Dr. Emoto is? The Japanese
Mm-hmm.
doctor who did, yeah, the hidden messages in water. And he took the photographs. For those of you listening who are not familiar, Dr. Emoto did some great work on frequency and our words on water and how water is influenced because we as human beings are made up of so much water, and how then it would show how we would be impacted by these words, right? And so you could say ugly, dark, angry, mean, whatever words on water, and it would actually form really ugly crystals, not aesthetically pleasing. And yet when he would say, or people would say and then take pictures of these words on water like love and gratitude and beauty and hope and joy, the water actually forms great crystals that are really
Mm.
aesthetically pleasing and more high vibrational. And that's what happens to us. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why it's so important how, again, it being an inside job, it's also about the meditation that we are both committed to doing on a daily basis. It's going inside and finding your own joy to let run through you to radiate out into the world. Right.
Wow, it gives me goosebumps to think of the potential of everybody listening right now. When you're in a community of people who speak beautiful words to us, not always in a way that is just yes all the time. They speak loving corrections to us as well. And then also, when we speak lovingly to ourselves, imagine the power of the two of those things together, and who we can be and how we can walk in this world as a light to the people who are outside that really need us to have that impression on them.
Thank you for saying that. That's so important so that we can become the highest expression of who we are meant to be, that we are surrounding ourselves with people that are elevating us as well and holding us to the highest level. And again, whether that's a well deserved compliment or whether it's a kind correction, I think that was maybe the word you just used, something of the sort. So done in a loving, but hey, there's something to look at here way, calling you out, right? And this is why it's so important that in our personal and intimate relationships that we pay attention to how we feel when we leave somebody. I like that you pointed that out, John. It's when we leave somebody, because we could be having fun in the moment and we could be distracted, whether we're distracted by some things that the ego likes that this person brings, whether it's the physical beauty or their home or their connection. Sometimes, right, we might not be paying attention to the deeper, more important things because of what this person comes with, or you just can't tell. Maybe you're with a bunch of people, but when you leave and you're back to yourself, it is incredibly important for you to notice and trace back when you start feeling icky where that is from, so that you can make really wise choices about who you spend your sacred, I'm going to call it sacred energy, because that is what it is. And it is your most time and energy are your most precious non-renewable resources.
Mm-hmm. And so, if you feel like this is something that people in your life need to hear, that maybe they need to go about their life a little bit differently, and you don't quite know how to tell them that, one thing you can do is send them this episode so that they can listen to it and they can really understand what kind of a change in direction in their life they might be able to take. Instead of focusing too much on one aspect of beauty, they can cultivate a different kind of beauty and be somebody where when people leave their presence, they leave fulfilled, happy, joyful, and connected.
I love that you're just such a natural coach that you're like, okay, all right, are you guys getting this? Here's how we can help everyone. Here's how we can help these people, because that's the ultimate goal. We're all in this together. And with those of you who are watching this on YouTube, because the Sacred Beauty Lifestyle podcast is on video on YouTube, if you do not know, uh, I was giggling when John was speaking a moment ago because I instantly went back to Dr. Joe Dispenza's retreat. And when he was saying, you're going to change here and you might, be making some changes. And in fact, you could change your outgoing message so you could just get this out there and not have to tell people individually, but something of the sort of like, oh, if I don't call you back on your outgoing message, thanks for your calling, blah, blah, blah. If I don't call you back, you're one of the changes. So just, we do have to put ourselves first and be conscious of this, and how precious our energy is. And yeah, I think we can't underestimate the value of that.
And maybe by that loving language, they may have some self reflection and ask themselves, why was I somebody who was one part of the change? And then maybe by you changing, and they'll see the change, they'll want to change as well. And maybe there will be a reconciliation. So we have no idea what happens when we decide to make a change for ourselves for the better, because we are impacting people whether we know it or not.
That's a great point. Like sometimes we have this cancel culture, right? And sometimes we just want to like cut people off 100%. And I learned something a few months back that I thought was kind of brilliant. I have not yet used this. I very well may. A woman shared with me that what you can do when you're not sure about the relationship, the friendship, and if you want to continue to foster it, that you could say, I'm taking a break from this relationship right now and I'm in reflection. I'm just taking a break, so that you can maybe pull away if need be, if it's someone you're really close with and you're really unclear and you don't want to just disappear, but you want time, you could do something like that. And I don't know right now what this means, and that's okay. Isn't that cool?
And it's very cool. Yes. And if you're listening to this and you don't know how to do that, reach out to Lisa. Lisa is really, really good at communicating clearly, and she can help you with what that message may need to look like when you are sending it to somebody. Because ultimately, we got to take care of us. And the more we can take care of ourselves, the more we can take care of other people. Be in this life of service, be in this life of building a community, be in this life of impacting other people, which then really feeds back into us, and we would be young and youthful, and it would really come out from the inside to the outside, and be happy and be joyful and be beautiful all at the same time.
And yes, and thank you. And to be on purpose, right? When we're feeling really good and we're really clear, I love that you brought up clarity, because I love that that was in your bio. And that is absolutely one of the many ways in which we are very similar. I joke that I'm going to change my middle name to Clarity. I think it already is. It's just, I mean, some people probably see it already on my birth certificate, right? It's like those who know me. It's so important. And I think you shared with me, John, that Brene Brown, one of our great leaders of this time, shared that clarity is kind and unclear is unkind. Did I get that
That is
right?
correct. Yes.
Isn't it though?
It
It's
really is.
kind.
And I think a lot of times when we're in situations where we feel frustrated because another person isn't hearing us, maybe we can also think to ourselves, hey, was I clear? Was I kind to this person? Or did I put them in a position where they had to guess what I was saying Therefore, there is the misunderstanding and the miscommunication, and now we're in this unpleasant situation. So if something is happening, we have a part, they have a part, let's do our part so that we can make sure that we can benefit and bring to the table to the relationships that we value our best self so that the relationship can be the healthiest that it can be.
That is beautiful. Thank you, John. I feel like we should be hosting a workshop because there's so much that you and I can share. And you're such a natural born coach or mentor. The way that you keep bringing back these great teachings for our listeners. Thank you. There's so much wisdom in these nuggets you're sharing here. And that's what it's all about, is making the world a better place. And there's still like so much I want to ask you. And I know we had, started talking about the sacredness of beauty and aging, and where else I wanted to go with that is that I really love that you help support women in knowing that they have more value as they age. And I'm so curious, how did that come about for you? Like, how did you step into this role?
Mm, I had a lot of mentors growing up who my favorite mentors ended up being the ones who are women. And I've had a lot of male mentors as well. And sure, I've had some great experiences, but somehow in those experiences, there ended up being some kind of a negative experience. And whether it's betrayal or neglect or whatnot, some male influences for the most part, or male mentors for the most part, there was some disappointment that was there. So I really leaned on the female mentors or leaders in my life that had impacted me, nurtured me in various ways. And so, very naturally, it was not hard to see the value and the beauty that women bring to the table, that women lead very differently than men lead. I believe both can be in leadership of different kind because we're made differently. And so for women then to not look down on themselves and deprive then a whole community of people that they could be impacting the way that I was impacted by these female mentors, I see such a waste when that happens. And so I feel very called to give back to the female community because I've been impacted by these leaders to then help support and bring be a mirror and bring clarity to these women who they really are so that they can live a fulfilled life and the community around them can also be lifted up.
Just for some clarity, were you saying that sometimes these women weren't doing what they could be doing because they felt like their beauty had expired, their value had expired? Is that what you were saying? Is that then you help hold the mirror back to showing them that the value that they actually do bring? Like, that was the connection I wanted to understand a moment ago.
Very much so, yes. I think a lot of times we devalue ourselves based off of either different narratives that we're told or the overall environment, especially in the Western culture. We do not value our elderly. And I come from a background where our elderly is very valued. A lot of countries have cultures where their elderly is very valued. Like, who cooks better than Nona? Nobody cooks better than Nona, right? And so, in general, but in North America, we put our elderly in homes. We completely disregard what they say because we think that they don't know what they're talking about, and then they're put in these very sad positions where they devalue themselves, and then a community also gets deprived of the potential blessings that could come from them should they see themselves clearly and then be able to be themselves and love on and nurture and lead the people around them because they have so much to offer. They just may not know it or see it clearly because of the influences around them.
Well, thank you for that work because it is so important. I love that you are such a great mirror cleaner, to come back to that. Who knew this role that you needed to fill? Who knew?
Sure, yeah, and it wasn't my choosing. A great example is when I started my podcast, I thought it was going to be for people around my own age. And then as the podcast progressed and the statistics would come out, it would be very skewed very, very heavily on women and on women who are over 45. And I just had to embrace it and say, okay, clearly I am not reaching the people of my own age at the moment. And then perhaps my calling is to support this community. Who am I to also devalue myself and think that I shouldn't be doing this work? Who am I to say, hey, these people feel help from me, but I don't feel qualified to talk to them? I really, in a healthy way, needed to step up and say, okay, if this is what the universe is calling for me to do, then I'm going to do the best that I can until I'm called to then do something else. And here we are now.
I love it. Listening is everything, isn't it? To being able to listen to those whispers. I mean, obviously, you're from a business perspective, you were doing the right thing and looking at the stats and making a wise business choice. But you could have also pushed that away and you could have also pivoted what you were talking about and you could have done something else. Like sometimes we don't look at these really blatant signs. So thanks for stepping up to the plate because you, my friend, have so much to share. And you are seriously, as I like I started this episode, you are such a gift. So I would love if you could tell us and the Sacred Beauty podcast listeners here, what would you go back and say to your 20-year-old self? What do you wish that you knew? What would you go whisper in 20-year-old John's ear right now?
I would say that what you're going through is not for nothing. And in my 20s, it was a really strange time. I had to make a lot of strong and big decisions of standing for myself. And I, as alluded to earlier, left a certain community that I was in. I felt very lost. I switched my career in a different way. I disappointed some people, and it wasn't great. But I also know now, sitting here, that it was not all for nothing. And when we know that hardship brings a certain outcome that's favorable, it makes going through it that much easier. So that's what I would say to myself in my 20s.
That is such good wisdom. Thank you for sharing that. And what is your big message that you would just scream from mountaintops? Where would we have to like be like, okay, go get that guy. We need to bring him down. No, I'm just kidding. What is that big message that you want the whole world to know?
I want them to know that they need to appreciate themselves. And I think it's really, really hard when we are bombarded in different ways. Sometimes we look at ourselves in the mirror and we say things to ourselves that we would never say to a loved one. And it's really unfortunate how we do that. There's a really interesting, so Jordan Peterson talks about how if we had a pet and they needed medication, we would be so diligent. But when it comes to us, why do we put certain things in our body and allow for ourselves to neglect ourselves or all these different things? And part of it has to do with perhaps a lack of appreciation. So I would love to scream on the top of mountains that you value and you have value and you please appreciate yourself, because I think when we're able to do that, we not only lift ourselves up, but we also can be that rising tide that lifts all boats.
Oh, I love that you brought that in. Thank you. That was a beautiful, beautiful wrap up and message. You are an absolute plethora of information. You're so fun to hang out with. And thank you for sharing your time, your wisdom, your energy, and your heart with the Sacred Beauty Lifestyle podcast.
Thanks for having me here. It was tons of fun. I'm sure everybody can tell that we can talk forever. I hope to be able to do a workshop or to be back or to have a place where we can uh, engage this community some more.
I would absolutely love it, and I bet they will as well. So, before we go, where can our listeners find you?
So I'm everywhere at the John Collective. So that's my website. It's my Instagram handle. So if you need to find me, go to Google and search the John Collective.
Perfect. And we'll also have all of your information in the show notes. Thank you again, John. I'm Lisa Eddy, your host of the Sacred Beauty Lifestyle Podcast, which is now being shared here on YouTube. I hope this episode brought you insights and inspiration to radiate and shine with confidence. Remember to subscribe so you receive new episodes hot off the press right when they are released. And follow me on Instagram for more juicy tips at I am Lisa Eddy. Also, ladies and gentlemen, when you subscribe, like, and share these episodes, it helps me to get seen by more people. And that means a lot to me because I am committed to reaching millions of women across the globe and waking them up to the sacred beauty lifestyle, owning their true power and beauty, both inside and out. Now more than ever, we need more women shining instead of hiding. When we band together, we are unstoppable. This is how we change the world together. Remember the sacred beauty lifestyle and get on out there and shine. The world needs your light.